Welcome to Griffonomics.
Glad to be here for this one.
Whether you are prepping for a major strategy meeting, trying to catch up on the absolute bleeding edge of the medical sector, or, you are just insanely curious about how the world works, you are in the exact right place.
You absolutely are.
We're thrilled you're joining us for this deep dive because today we are embarking on a truly fascinating journey into the future of healthcare and logistics.
It really is a profound shift we're looking at today. We are examining TransMedics, trading under the ticker TMDX, and we're looking really closely at their fundamental transformation.
Right.
Because they have evolved from being a traditional medical device manufacturer into something entirely different. They are now a vertically integrated, nationwide organ logistics powerhouse.
And that transition, that's really the core of our mission today. We want to give you, the listener, the complete picture of how this happened and where it's going next. We are going to unpack the company's seemingly impenetrable trident moat, dissect their explosive 2025 financial inflection point, and then look ahead to their massive aviation-led expansion and their Gen 3 kidney roadmap.
It's a packed agenda.
It is. And honestly, looking at your background on the video right now, it looks like you are sitting inside a high-tech logistics command center.
Yeah, I felt it was highly appropriate for today's topic. Because when you peel back the layers on TransMedics, you quickly realize this isn't just a medical story.
No, not at all.
It is an absolute masterclass in supply chain disruption. What they are doing involves complex routing algorithms, managing aviation fleets, maintaining real-time tracking networks, and all of this is applied to the most precious, time-sensitive cargo imaginable.
Yeah, let's actually start with the cargo itself and the technology that makes all of this possible, which is the organ care system, or OCS.
Right, the OCS.
Because to really appreciate what TransMedics is doing, we have to look at the decades-old industry standard they're trying to replace. For the longest time, the standard of care in organ transplantation was static cold storage.
Yeah.
Which is, frankly, just a fancy way of saying they put a human organ in a specialized plastic cooler filled with ice.
I know, it sounds archaic. But, it has saved countless lives historically. However, that method has very severe inherent limitations.
The ticking clock.
Exactly. When a donor organ is put on ice, it suffers from ischemia. That's a lack of blood supply, which inevitably leads to cellular decay. The literal clock starts ticking the second that organ goes into the cooler.
Wow.
And the TransMedics organ care system fundamentally flips that entire paradigm. It is currently the only FDA-approved, portable, multi-organ warm perfusion technology platform on the market.
So no ice.
No ice. Instead of freezing the organ and rushing against the clock, the OCS replicates human physiology. It keeps the organ alive, warm, and functioning during transport.
See, this is the part of the research that read like a science fiction novel to me. The sources describe it so vividly. While in transit, inside this clear, portable unit, a donor lung actually breathes.
It does.
The heart is visibly beating, the liver produces bile, and the kidney makes urine. They are literally keeping these organs awake and working while flying them across the country.
It's basically a miniaturized intensive care unit in a suitcase.
That is insane. But as incredible as the science is, my question is about the business. How do you actually monetize keeping an organ alive in a box?
It's a great question, and they utilize a highly effective recurring revenue model to do it. It breaks down into two main streams.
Okay.
The primary driver is their product revenue. For every single transplant procedure that uses the OCS, the receiving hospital has to purchase single-use, organ-specific disposable sets.
Oh, single use, I see.
Right. These sets include the proprietary preservation solutions that actually keep the organ viable. So every single time an organ is moved on their system, TransMedics makes a recurring sale.
Got it.
And to a much lesser extent, this segment also includes the outright sale, or the implied rental, of the OCS consoles themselves.
Okay, so it's essentially the classic razor and blade business model, just applied to life-saving medical tech. You have the main console, the razor, but you constantly need to buy the disposable sets, the blades, to actually run it.
Precisely. But the second stream is where the business model truly evolved, and that's their service revenue. Transplant centers actually pay TransMedics to completely outsource the incredibly complex organ procurement process itself.
Okay, let's unpack this, because this leads us perfectly into what management calls the TransMedics trident.
Yes, the trident.
This is their competitive moat. Management argues this trident makes it nearly impossible for domestic competitors to simply copy what they are doing. So what exactly are the three prongs of this trident?
Well, it is a brilliant piece of strategic positioning. The first prong of the trident is the technological monopoly we just discussed,
Hmm.
the OCS platform itself. Competitors are still largely relying on static cold storage or very limited perfusion techniques, while TransMedics holds the high ground with fully FDA-approved multi-organ warm perfusion.
Okay, so that's prong one.
Yeah. The second prong is that turnkey clinical service you mentioned, which they call the NOP, or the National OCS Program.
Now, from what I gathered, the NOP isn't just some white glove delivery service dropping off a machine at a hospital loading dock.
Not at all.
Under the NOP, transplant centers outsource the entire procurement headache. Instead of the hospital scrambling at 2 a.m., TransMedics has built a network of 18 hubs scattered across the United States.
Exactly.
And they employ over 50 procurement surgeons and more than 200 clinical specialists to do the actual work.
Think about the friction that removes for a hospital administration. A transplant center doesn't have to wake up a surgeon, find an available charter flight, and coordinate ground transport in the middle of the night.
Right, which sounds like a logistical nightmare.
It is. But TransMedics handles all of it as a package service. And that brings us to the third, and arguably most ambitious, prong of the trident, which is vertically integrated logistics.
Okay.
To ensure the NOP runs flawlessly and isn't delayed by third parties, TransMedics actually went out and built its own airline.
See, I was completely geeking out over the logistics and the research, but I couldn't quite wrap my head around the scale of it. Are they just chartering private flights, or how are they actually moving these organs so reliably across the country?
They own the metal.
Wow.
Yeah, they have built a dedicated fleet of 22 environmentally friendly, high-speed, fixed-wing aircraft. Specifically, they are flying Embraer Phenom 300E jets.
22 jets.
They own and operate these jets, and they employ a dedicated roster of over 130 pilots. According to the data, this internal fleet now covers about 80% of all their NOP flight missions.
That's incredible.
They are no longer at the mercy of unpredictable commercial charter schedules.
That is wild. A medical device company running its own private airline. But how on earth do they coordinate all of that? You have surgeons in 18 hubs, 22 jets, hundreds of specialists, and an organ that needs to get to a specific hospital at an exact specific time.
This raises an important question about infrastructure. Managing an operation of that scale requires an immense digital ecosystem. It acts as the brains of this entire logistics network.
Okay, so how does it work?
TransMedics operates a 247 logistics command center, manned by 90 full-time employees, 365 days a year.
Wow.
And to make sure nothing falls through the cracks, the advanced routing technology they use to coordinate the surgeons, jets, and ground transport was actually developed in a strategic partnership with MIT.
MIT. That makes sense. And what's really cool is how all of that connects to the transplant centers waiting on the other end.
Right, the app.
Yeah, they use a digital platform called the NOP Connect 2.0 app. It's a fully HIPAA compliant application that gives the waiting hospital real-time visibility.
It's brilliant.
They can see the organ's exact GPS location, its active clinical status, because remember, the heart is actually beating inside the box, so they can monitor its health and all the billing information. I love the analogy I saw on the sources. It's basically a ride-sharing app, but for a life-saving organ.
What's fascinating here is how this entire Trident ecosystem, the technology, the clinical service, and the aviation, impacts the broader medical landscape. TransMedics has transitioned from merely taking market share from legacy competitors to fundamentally expanding the entire market.
Right.
Let's look at 2025. TransMedics supported 5,139 U.S. transplants. That represents 26% of the entire national volume for heart, lung, and liver transplants.
That is a massive footprint. And there was a statistic from the CEO, Waleed Hassanein, that really stood out. Since 2022, overall national transplant volumes for those specific organs grew by 25%, inclusive of the organs procured through the NOP.
Yes.
But here is the kicker. If you remove the OCS from the equation, national transplant volumes would have actually declined by 1%. They aren't just taking a bigger slice of the pie. They are the primary reason the pie itself is getting bigger.
Because the technology keeps organs viable that would otherwise be discarded due to distance or time constraints. The real-world utilization rates for organs placed on the OCS are staggering.
Tell me about it.
They are seeing a 98% utilization rate for livers, 97% for hearts, and 96% for lungs.
That's almost perfect.
It is. If a donor organ goes on to the OCS, it is almost certainly going to result in a successful transplant. And, logically, that high clinical success rate translates directly into a massive financial inflection for the company.
Let's actually dig into those FY 2025 numbers because looking at the top line, they had a massive year. Total revenue hit $605.5 million, which is a 37.1% year-over-year increase.
Huge growth.
But when I looked at the segment breakdown, I was a bit confused. U.S. liver is the absolute dominant engine right now, pulling in $459.4 million. That's followed by U.S. heart at $111.8 million, and U.S. lung all the way down at $13.4 million.
Yeah, quite a spread.
Why is the liver segment so disproportionately huge compared to the others?
Well, it comes down to clinical dynamics and the sheer volume of the liver market. Livers are incredibly robust organs, but they are highly susceptible to damage from cold ischemia that time spent in the ice cooler.
Oh, I see.
The OCS liver keeps the organ flushed and metabolically active, which dramatically expands the pool of usable donor livers. Lungs, on the other hand, are notoriously fragile and difficult to procure, which is why that number is lower.
Right.
We'll touch on how they plan to fix that shortly. But while top-line growth is impressive, the profitability is where the long-term thesis really solidifies. Full-year net income for 2025 was $190.3 million.
Yeah.
Now, it is crucial to note that their Q4 net income was heavily boosted by an $83.8 million income tax benefit.
Wait, let me stop you there. I saw that in the notes that they released a valuation allowance on deferred tax assets.
Yes.
Releasing a tax allowance sounds a lot like an accounting trick to make the quarter look better. Is this actually a reliable indicator of the underlying business health, or is it just a paper game?
It's a very fair point of skepticism, but it's much more than a paper game. Think of that $84 million tax benefit as a massive formal vote of confidence from both management and their external auditors.
How so?
In corporate finance, you only get to release that valuation allowance and claim that benefit if you can conclusively prove that your company is going to be consistently, predictably profitable going forward.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It means they expect to generate more than enough future income to actually use those tax assets. Alongside that validation, we saw their full-year operating margins expand massively, going from 8.5% in 2024 to 17.9% in 2025.
That's a huge jump.
They are proving to the market that this highly complex, aviation-heavy model can scale profitably.
So what does this all mean for 2026 and beyond? Because as we look at the 2026 roadmap, the revenue guidance looks strong. Management is projecting between $727 million and $757 million for 2026. Which represents another 20% to 25% in year-over-year growth. But there is a detail in the guidance about margins that might catch an investor off guard. They mentioned operating margins will likely contract by up to 250 basis points.
Yes, they did.
For those of us who don't speak Wall Street 24/7, that's 2.5%, right? Why are they losing margin when revenue is growing so fast?
Yes, 2.5%, and it's an intended contraction. Management framed this very specifically as a transitory phase.
Transitory.
Exactly. They are purposefully stepping up heavy investments to fund several major growth catalysts. It is a strategic pullback in near-term margin to build out massive physical and clinical infrastructure. They are taking a step back in 2026 with a clear, stated long-term goal of marching toward 30% operating margins by 2028.
See, I'm always a little skeptical when a company calls a dip in profits transitory, but assuming they are right, where's all that heavy investment going?
Well, a significant portion is going toward their European beachhead. They aren't just staying in the U.S. TransMedics is officially launching the national OCS program model in Italy in the first half of 2026.
Really?
Italy?
Yes. And this isn't just a small pilot study. They are setting up 4 distinct hubs, 2 in northern Italy and 2 in the south.
Wow.
They are building a localized command center there and deploying a dedicated regional air and ground fleet. The sources also note they are actively engaging with other European regions for future expansion.
That sounds expensive.
Incredibly expensive. Replicating a logistics network that complex across international borders is incredibly capital-intensive upfront, which explains that 2.5% margin contraction.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Beyond the geographical logistics expansion, their clinical pipeline is loaded with next-generation trials. The report mentioned they have full FDA IDE approval to push the boundaries of what their machines can do.
Yes, the IDE approval.
Just to clarify, I saw the acronym IDE in the pipeline report. What does that actually mean for them in practice? IDE stands for Investigational Device Exemption.
Okay.
It is basically the FDA giving them the green light to test these devices in clinical trials for new applications, allowing them to push the boundaries of the technology on human subjects safely.
Okay.
This is where we see them moving from mere preservation to actual functional enhancement. For the heart segment, they are running the ENHANCE trial.
The enhance, right.
The goal here isn't just to keep the heart alive during transport. They are seeking to prove functional enhancement of the organ beyond current preservation limits.
Making it better.
Exactly. Ultimately, they are aiming for official clinical claims of superiority against static cold storage for standard donor hearts.
That would be huge. And then there is the lung segment. We mentioned earlier that lung revenue was relatively tiny, only about $13.4 million, which the company says represents a meager 2% market penetration.
Very small.
Management actually refers to the lung segment as a sleeping giant. To wake that giant up, they are launching the de novo trial in early 2026 to totally resurrect that product line.
Yeah.
But as exciting as enhancing hearts and waking up the lung market sounds, the real holy grail in their pipeline seems to be the kidney.
Without question, the kidney's the frontier. Management has declared 2027 as the year of the kidney.
The year of the kidney.
They are targeting that year to launch clinical trials for the OCS kidney. And it is vital to understand that this won't just be a simple adaptation of their current tech. The OCS kidney serves as the front-end launch pad for their entire Gen 3 technology platform.
Yeah, the Gen 3 upgrades sound incredible. The system has been completely redesigned from the ground up. It's going to be smaller and lighter. But the biggest deal, at least from an operational standpoint, is that it will be fully automated and remotely monitored with integrated biosensors.
Which is a huge operational shift.
Exactly. Right now, clinical specialists have to do manual blood sampling while in transit. With Gen 3, the machine just handles it automatically and streams the data. And eventually, they plan to roll this Gen 3 tech backward into the existing heart, lung, and liver systems too. But why the kidney first? Why is that the focus for their biggest tech leap?
If we look at the why behind this massive push, it entirely comes down to scale. The total addressable market for kidneys absolutely dwarfs the other organs combined.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Right now, approximately 10,000 donor kidneys are discarded annually in the U.S., largely due to damage from cold storage ischemia.
10,000? That's tragic.
It is. TransMedics wants to tap into that discarded pool. They've explicitly stated that solving the kidney equation is the critical key to hitting their boldest targets, which is supporting 20,000 U.S. transplants annually by 2030 and eventually over 30,000 globally.
It is an incredibly inspiring vision. But to truly help you, the listener, get a well-rounded view, we can't just look at the rosy projections. We have to look at the objective reality of the market. It's not all perfectly clear skies for TransMedics. There are real risks and headwinds they're navigating right now.
Definitely. Any company disrupting a legacy medical market is going to face severe friction, both competitive and regulatory. For TransMedics, early 2025 saw an activist short seller publish a disparaging report. In conjunction with that, there was an FDA petition filed aiming to suspend the PMA for the OCS liver device.
Just to make sure we're all on the same page, PMA is pre-market approval, right?
Correct.
And if an FDA petition successfully suspends a pre-market approval, that essentially means they can't sell or use the device.
Exactly. It is the highest level of device regulation, and suspending it would halt operations for that specific organ. Now, while the petition is a hurdle, it's worth noting management's stance.
What are they saying?
On the competitive front, management has publicly claimed that their rivals are actually hesitating to run head-to-head randomized clinical trials against the OCS platform, which speaks volumes about TransMedics' confidence in their clinical superiority.
Still, whenever you have short seller reports and regulatory petitions floating around, class action securities lawsuits almost inevitably follow, which the company is currently dealing with. It generates a lot of noise. But beyond the legal and regulatory drama, what are the actual operational risks of pulling off this roadmap?
Well, we discussed the European expansion earlier. Building a turnkey aviation and logistics network in the U.S. was monumentally hard. Exporting that model to Italy carries massive execution risk.
Because it's a whole new system.
Exactly. You are navigating entirely different European airspace regulations, complex local labor laws, and entirely different national medical networks.
Right.
Any missteps there could easily moderate the pace of their international launch and extend that period of margin contraction. Furthermore, there's a persistent quirk in the U.S. transplant data that observers need to remember, and that's seasonality.
Seasonality.
Management was very clear that Q3 consistently sees a dip in U.S. transplant volumes across the board. It's a macroeconomic dynamic of the medical field that will likely persist, regardless of how good the OCS technology is.
People go on vacation, hospitals slow down a bit in late summer.
Exactly. If we connect this to the bigger picture, though the fundamental question we are looking at isn't just about whether a single company can hit its quarterly margin guidance or navigate Italian airspace.
Yeah, it's bigger than that.
It's about a fundamental shift in how we handle human life. If TransMedics can successfully scale this trident moat, if they can truly eliminate the geographic borders and silence the ticking clock of cold storage, how does that alter the entire medical ecosystem?
It changes everything.
Could we be looking at a near future where organ transplantation transitions from a frantic, unpredictable midnight emergency into a highly predictable, routine, scheduled procedure?
A scheduled procedure. Wow.
You think about how profoundly that would change the lives and stress levels of the procurement surgeons, the hospital staff, and most importantly, the thousands of patients waiting anxiously on the list for a second chance at life.
That is an incredible thought to leave on. The idea of taking the panic out of a transplant is revolutionary all on its own, well beyond the financial metrics. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it gave you a clear, comprehensive view of the mechanics and the future of organ logistics. Risk defined, portfolio protected.